They don't lose it all at once. There's no dramatic collapse, no final scream echoing through the corridors of a decaying mind. That would be too honest, too crude. Instead, it slips away quietly. A slow erosion masked by eloquence, intelligence, insight. One day they're dissecting morality, the next they're rationalizing cruelty, and by the end they're nothing more than clever corpses playing with words. It's almost impressive how seamless the descent is. The smarter they are, the more intricate the justifications. Evil doesn't need to seduce them with lust or greed. All it needs is a thesis, an idea that tastes like truth but is hollow at the core. And once they swallow it, the soul begins to rot, out of sight, beneath layers of logic, brilliance, and performance. You'd think awareness would protect them, that knowing too much might save them. But awareness without reverence is a curse. They study the light only to explain it away, mock the sacred in the name of independence, and strip the world bare, confusing deconstruction for depth. Dostoevsky saw it before we did. He gave us Ivan, Kirillov, Stavrogin, intellects on fire, hearts gone cold. Men who traded their souls not for pleasure, but for theories. And the terrifying part? They knew exactly what they were doing. This isn't a story about ignorance. It's about what happens when brilliance turns on itself. When the mind, left unchecked, devours the very thing that gave it meaning. And if you're not careful, you'll end up just like them. Let's begin. He was the kind of man who could dismantle your beliefs in a conversation and leave you thanking him for it. You'd walk away convinced he was brilliant, and he was, but you'd also feel a quiet sickness growing in your chest, as if something had been taken from you, something you couldn't name. That's how it begins. That's how intelligence becomes a weapon. It flatters you, dazzles you, then slowly hollows you out. There's a moment in the brothers Karamazov where Ivan delivers his famous rebellion, not against men, but against God himself. He doesn't deny God outright. That would be too crude, too easy. He simply refuses the world he created. He looks at the suffering of children and says, "I respectfully return my ticket." And he says it with such calm, such certainty, that you can almost believe it's noble. But Dostoevsky knew better. That wasn't moral clarity. That was despair dressed in rhetoric. A man trying to protect his pride by rejecting the entire moral order. Smart people do this all the time. They see the cracks in the system, and instead of searching for grace beneath the rubble, they walk away smugly, as if walking away were wisdom, as if destruction were purity. It feels sophisticated to reject belief. It feels powerful to tear meaning down. And for a while, it works. They become critics of everything: religion, morality, love, family, until they're alone in a desert of their own making, proud of the emptiness, calling it clarity. But deep down, they're starving. Intelligence gives them eyes sharp enough to see the flaws in everything, but it doesn't give them the courage to live without illusions. So they fall into a kind of elegant nihilism. Not the loud, angry kind, the quiet, polished version that shows up at universities and cocktail parties, where truth is just an outdated metaphor and goodness is a social construct. They call it realism. But it's just fear in disguise. Fear of being wrong, fear of surrender, fear of faith. Ivan isn't some villain twisting his mustache. He's tragic because he's right, halfway. That's the curse. His logic is airtight, his observations are real, but his conclusions rot the soul. He sees innocent suffering and assumes the universe must be godless or unjust. He can't tolerate mystery. He can't sit with unresolved pain, so he chooses rejection. But even he doesn't believe his own rejection. That's why the devil visits him in the end. Not a horned beast, but a sly, mocking hallucination. One that sounds suspiciously like Ivan himself.
That's what happens when intellect eats itself. When the mind, unmoored from the heart, builds a world too clean for grace to live in. A world where children suffer and logic says, "There is no ticket worth that price." But that same logic leaves you nowhere to go, no reason to act, no reason to forgive, no reason to hope. And maybe that's the point. Maybe smart people lose their souls because they don't believe they have one to lose. They reduce it to chemistry, to upbringing, to a pattern of neurons, and then wonder why they feel like ghosts in their own skin. Wisdom doesn't shout over mystery. It sits beside it. Intelligence wants the answers now. Wisdom lets them unfold. One demands control. The other walks through chaos with open hands. Ivan chose control. So do many of us. But when the scaffolding collapses, when the theories no longer soothe the ache, we're left where he was. Brilliant, exhausted, and utterly alone. This is the first step in the descent. Believing that if you're smart enough, you don't have to kneel. That reason alone can carry the weight of the soul. But it can't. It was never meant to. And sooner or later, something breaks.
He doesn't whisper in your ear anymore. That would be too primitive, too easy to resist. These days, he hides in your ideas. You think it's your own thought, clean, rational, maybe even noble. You think you've stumbled onto some piercing truth, but it's him. In the tone, in the phrasing, in the certainty. That's how the devil survives in an age of atheists. He puts on a suit and gets tenure. Dostoevsky understood this before most modern thinkers were even born. He didn't paint the devil as some fire-breathing monster or grotesque figure looming in shadows. He gave us Ivan's devil, polite, clever, exhausted. A man in a threadbare coat who speaks like an old friend, always smiling, always reasonable. That's the new possession. Not screaming or contorting, but rationalizing, intellectualizing evil until it sounds humane. You see it with Kirillov in Demons, the man who decides to kill himself in order to prove his freedom. The logic is flawless. If there is no God, man is the only God. And if man is God, then the ultimate act of power is to reject life itself. It sounds clean on paper, but the moment you look past the grammar, you feel it. The void underneath. It's not courage driving him. It's madness wrapped in syllogism. And that's what makes it dangerous. The beauty of it. These aren't sloppy ideas. They're seductive. They appeal to pride, to autonomy, to the illusion that you can remake morality from scratch and come out clean. But every time they're followed to the end, there's a corpse waiting. Kirillov, Stavrogin, Ivan. Each one thought he was building a new world. What they built was a mirror, and behind it, nothing. Stavrogin is the most chilling of them all. He isn't passionate or tortured like Raskolnikov. He's cold, elegant, dead on the inside. A man so brilliant he transcends morality, or so he thinks. But even he can't outrun what he's done. His crimes don't scream at him. They rot him quietly. That's the price of trying to become your own god. You gain the throne, but the temple collapses, and there's no priest left to offer absolution. These are the men who lose their souls on purpose. They study evil, flirt with it, intellectualize it,
until it becomes furniture in their psyche. The devil doesn't need to tempt them with sin. He tempts them with brilliance, with clarity, with certainty. He doesn't say kill. He says understand. He doesn't say rebel. He says rethink. By the time they realize it was him speaking, they've already taken the deal. And this isn't some distant 19th century cautionary tale. It's happening now. Every time someone talks about evil as a social construct, every time murder is explained away as biological inevitability, every time suffering is sterilized with academic language until it no longer offends, we've built cathedrals of intellect where no spirit can breathe, and we call it progress. The devil has a philosophy degree. He teaches ethics. He writes bestsellers. He has a podcast. And the smartest people, the ones too clever to believe in him, are the easiest to fool. He understood freedom too well. That was the problem. He saw it not as a gift, but a curse. A terrifying vastness with no ceiling and no floor. Most people never get that far. They cling to rules, to systems, to inherited beliefs. But the smart ones, they break through. They realize that no authority is absolute, no tradition unquestionable, no meaning pre-built. And at first it feels like liberation. They've shattered the cage. But the truth is, the cage was the only thing keeping them from falling into the abyss. Dostoevsky's Kirillov doesn't scream. He doesn't pray. He speaks calmly about killing himself. Not out of despair, but as an act of metaphysical defiance. A philosophical proof. If there is no God, then there are no rules. And if there are no rules, the ultimate freedom is to end your own life, purely to assert your will. He believes that if he can do this, he'll become divine. Not in spirit, but in sovereignty. Godhood by suicide. That's how far it goes when you follow reason alone. No one wakes up wanting that. It begins slowly, peeling back layers of belief, questioning what you're told, wanting to build a cleaner, truer world. But if you strip away meaning without replacing it, you don't become free. You become haunted. You start seeing freedom everywhere, in every choice, every breath, and it starts to crush you. No one is watching. No one is waiting. No one is coming to save you. That's when the betrayal begins, not of others, of yourself. You feel the soul stirring, in guilt, in love, in a fragile sense of awe, and you turn away. You feel it in the silence after a funeral, or when you look at a child who trusts you, or when someone forgives you for something you don't deserve. The soul whispers, and you silence it. Ivan did it with arguments. Stavrogin did it with detachment. Kirillov did it with death. Each of them knew at some level that they were standing on holy ground. And they walked away. That's the tragedy Dostoevsky exposes. The soul isn't stolen, it's surrendered, piece by piece. The smarter you are, the easier it is to rationalize the trade. You convince yourself that kindness is weakness, that love is biology, that conscience is conditioning, until finally, nothing speaks to you anymore. Not God, not guilt, not even your own voice. You don't need a devil when you've learned to betray yourself this efficiently. That's the moment freedom stops being a gift. When you stand at the edge of meaning, naked and shaking, and choose, not mystery, not mercy, but control. You don't want to need anyone. You don't want to be small, so you silence the soul and crown yourself, and maybe no one notices. Maybe the world keeps calling you brilliant, but you know. He doesn't scream. He mutters.
He stares at the wall for hours, imagining dialogues that never happened, rewriting scenes from his life in his head. Every thought spirals back toward himself. His failures, his intelligence, his superiority, his shame. He isn't mad. He's self-aware. Too self-aware. That's the curse. He sees everything, understands it all, but can't feel anything real. That's what happens when you turn your soul into a mirror and smash it trying to find the truth. Dostoevsky's underground man is the ghost of a man who thought he was too smart to be ordinary. He's not tortured by others. He's tortured by himself. Every emotion is dissected before it has time to bloom. Every impulse is interrogated until it withers. He watches himself like a scientist studying a rat, but the rat is his own heart. There's no violence in him, no drama, just rot. The quiet decomposition of someone who lost all contact with others because he refused to need them. This is where the soul dies, not in grand evil, but in isolation. Smart people build fortresses out of intellect. Every question becomes a brick, every doubt a wall, until they've built a cathedral so airtight even grace can't get in. They sit there, protected, unchallenged, and wonder why nothing touches them anymore. No beauty moves them, no love changes them. They've anesthetized themselves with analysis. It's a slow suicide. The worst part is that they know. Somewhere inside they know they're cut off, but by the time they realize it, their pride has calcified. Admitting they were wrong would mean tearing down everything. Every essay, every belief, every identity they built. So they keep talking, keep reasoning, keep performing, but it's hollow, and they feel it. What brings them back, if anything can, is never more intelligence. That's the trap. They don't need a new idea. They need collapse, humiliation, grief. Something has to crack the shell they built around themselves. For Raskolnikov, it was Sonia, a woman with nothing to offer him except mercy. For Alyosha, it was suffering that didn't ask to be understood. For Dmitri, it was prison. For the rest, it was silence. Dostoevsky doesn't romanticize redemption. He never pretends it's clean. Coming back from the edge isn't poetic, it's brutal. It means kneeling. It means admitting you've been living in bad faith, that your cleverness didn't save you, that the thing you mocked, love, God, innocence, was the only thing that could have kept you whole. You have to become small again, fragile, dependent. And if you're proud, that feels like death. But it's the only way anything lives again. Alyosha doesn't win debates. He listens. He weeps. He forgives. He's not brilliant in the way Ivan is, but he carries a deeper truth, one that doesn't flinch in the face of evil but refuses to become it. He doesn't need to explain why life is sacred. He simply lives as if it is. Dostoevsky knew that most people aren't saved by arguments. They're saved by grace, by someone who refuses to give up on them, even when they've given up on themselves. It's not logical, it's not deserved, but it's real. And for those who've lost their souls, it's the only thing that can bring them back. So if you're still watching this, still thinking about these men who traded their spirits for brilliance, ask yourself, which voice are you following? The one that flatters, or the one that breaks you open? Because the soul doesn't return through knowledge. It returns through surrender. They didn't lose their souls overnight. They argued them away, piece by piece, in the name of clarity, in the name of freedom, in the name of being right. But somewhere deep beneath the logic, beneath the walls, beneath the pride, something is still alive, waiting, watching, and maybe, just maybe, still willing to be found. If any part of this hits you, stay with it. Let it bother you. Let it linger. That's the point. You don't come here for answers. You come here to remember the questions you buried.
If you want more, subscribe. But not for content. Subscribe so you don't disappear into your own intellect. So you have a place that drags you back when the world gets too clever. This is Shadow Loom, where the soul gets the last word.